Darkness enveloped him from the very first moment of his existence. Before he could see the light of the world, before he could hear the sound of the winds or feel the ground beneath his feet, Hades had already been condemned to oblivion. His birth was not met with celebration, for he had no time to cry or breathe. As soon as he opened his eyes for the first time, he felt the suffocating grip of Cronus's entrails, his own father, who devoured his children as soon as they were born. All he knew was a formless void, where time seemed not to exist. A place where there was no hope, only the certainty of oblivion. Within that living abyss, Hades was not alone. Amidst the damp and oppressive darkness, he felt the presence of his siblings, Poseidon, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, all trapped in the same silent condemnation. But none of them could speak, none of them could cry. They merely existed, like shadows within a body that was not their own. 4 years, or perhaps centuries, he remained there, not knowing if that would be the only fate awaiting him. He had never known what it was to be free, and perhaps because of that, he was the one who least dreamed of freedom. But destiny could not be stopped. Zeus, the youngest son of Cronus, had been hidden by his mother, Rhea, and grew up far from the Titan's madness. And when he became strong enough, he returned to claim what was rightfully his. With the cunning of Métis, he tricked Cronus into ingesting a powerful potion, forcing him to vomit the children he had swallowed. One by one, they emerged from the darkness, gasping as if they had just been reborn. Hades felt air in his lungs for the first time. The light burned his eyes, and the world around him seemed vast and immense. But within him, something remained cold. He looked at his siblings and knew that a war was about to begin. The Titans would not surrender the throne of the cosmos without a fight, and the children of Cronus would have to earn their right to exist. Hades did not seek vengeance, but neither did he forgive. The years of confinement had turned his soul into something harder, more silent. He did not desire glory like Zeus, nor power like Poseidon. He only wanted a purpose, a place where he could be more than a forgotten echo in time. And so, the firstborn of Cronus followed his brothers into the battle that would decide the fate of the world. The war that would define the reign of the gods had begun. But what he did not yet know was that his destiny had already been sealed, long before he wielded his first weapon. The world was in ruins. The sky split apart in storms of fire and thunder. The earth roared, torn apart by forces no mortal could ever comprehend. The sea churned in colossal waves, while the wind screamed as if nature itself was in agony. The Titanomachy had begun, the war between the new gods and the ancient Titans, a battle that would determine the fate of the cosmos. For 10 years, light and darkness clashed, and Hades, alongside his siblings, fought not just for a throne, but for the right to exist. The children of Cronus were powerful, but the Titans were ancient and relentless. During the early years of the conflict, victory seemed unattainable. The Titans had ruled for countless ages, and their dominion was absolute. Atlas, the fiercest of the Titanic warriors, led the forces against the young gods. Hyperion, the Titan of the sun, set the battlefield ablaze with his fury. Oceanus made the seas rise, attempting to drown his enemies before they could even lift their weapons. Cronus, the tyrant who devoured his own children, fought to maintain his supremacy, unleashing attacks that made time itself tremble. It was only when Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades sought allies that the tide of war began to turn. They freed the powerful Cyclopes, prisoners in Tartarus, who, in gratitude, gifted each of them a divine weapon. Zeus received the lightning bolts, with which he could split the skies in half. Poseidon received the trident, which had the power to shake the earth and oceans. Hades received a very different gift, a helmet of invisibility. With that helmet, Hades became a warrior of darkness. While Zeus and Poseidon devastated the battlefield with fury, Hades moved like a shadow, unseen by the eyes of his enemies. He infiltrated the Titans' ranks, sowing fear in their hearts and sabotaging their strategies without them realizing it. While the Titans struggled to defend themselves against the devastating assaults of his brothers, Hades worked in the shadows, lurking like an invisible predator, leading his adversaries into ambushes and unexpected attacks. His role in the war was silent, but deadly. Here is the faithful translation of your text into English, maintaining the exact structure of the original paragraphs. Finally, after a decade of battles and destruction, the Titans fell. Cronus was defeated and cast into Tartarus, imprisoned for all eternity along with his allies. Atlas, as punishment, was condemned to bear the weight of the heavens on his shoulders, a burden he could never abandon. The gods had won. The cosmos belonged to them. But victory did not come without consequences. The world would never be the same again, and the war left deep scars, not only on the earth but also on the gods themselves. It was then that the three brothers gathered to decide the fate of the universe. The cosmos was vast and too powerful to belong to just one. So, they cast lots. Zeus received the sky and the throne of Olympus. Poseidon claimed the seas. But when it was Hades' turn, his fate condemned him to the underworld. While his brothers would rule the world of the living, he would reign over the dead. No protest was accepted. No choice was given. He had not fought to be forgotten in the depths, but there he would dwell. Without a word, without a lament, Hades accepted his fate and descended into the shadows, never to return. The underworld was not just a kingdom but an inevitable fate. A place where everything that had ever lived, everything that had ever loved, laughed, or wept, would eventually arrive. Hades descended into the depths of the earth, crossed the gates of death, and took his somber throne, accepting the burden imposed upon him. While Zeus raised his palace on Olympus and Poseidon made the seas his domain, Hades became the lord of a realm where there was no life, only echoes of the past and eternal shadows. He did not choose this fate, but no one questioned it. Not even the dead. His dominion stretched across all the land beneath the living world, an endless labyrinth where rivers flowed without rest. The Styx, whose waters cursed anyone who dared to touch them. The Acheron, the river of pain, where souls lamented their past existences. The Lethe, whose waters erased memories, condemning spirits to oblivion. The Phlegethon, a river of fire that never ceased to burn. And the Cocytus, where the screams of traitors froze in eternal silence. Amid these rivers, souls wandered aimlessly, some still clinging to the illusions of life, others already consumed by eternity. And all of them, without exception, belonged to him. Hades was a just but ruthless king. He did not rule with wrath but with order. He established laws to separate the dead according to their deeds in life. The virtuous were taken to the Elysian fields, a paradise of peace where they could rest. The ordinary souls went to the asphodel meadows, a place of eternal monotony where existence was a distant echo of what it once was, and the wicked were sent to Tartarus, the dark prison where the souls of the condemned suffered endless torment. The judges of the dead, Rhadamanthus, Aeacus, and Minos, determined the fate of each spirit, and Hades ensured that order was upheld. No soul escaped. No life returned. This was the absolute balance of existence. But as the centuries passed, the weight of the underworld began to press upon him. Unlike his brothers, who were revered and celebrated by mortals, Hades was feared and avoided. His name was rarely spoken in prayers, for men feared attracting his attention. No temple was built in his honor, for no one wished to remember that one day they would walk into his domain. He was a god, but also an exile. And then came the doubt he had never dared to admit. Was this truly his purpose? Was he meant to remain there forever? Mortals told stories of gods who walked among them, who lived among kings and heroes, who shaped destinies. But Hades, he was condemned to merely watch them from a distance, knowing that one day, all of them would stand before his throne, pleading for something he could never grant, a second chance. He did not complain. He did not rebel. But within him, something was growing, a silent and dangerous desire to defy the rules that had been written before time itself existed. He could not change the past, he could not change what he was. But perhaps, just perhaps, he could change what was yet to come. The silence of the underworld was never absolute. Even without winds, even without storms, the lament of souls filled the air like an incessant whisper. It was a sound that Hades no longer heard. It had become part of his existence, like the weight of the black crown upon his head or the coldness of the stone throne on which he sat. But that night, if one could call it night in a place where the sun never rose, the silence was broken by something different. The gates of Erebus creaked. Cerberus, the three-headed hound, growled furiously, his eyes blazing with rage as he saw someone daring to cross the boundaries between worlds. Hades lifted his gaze, intrigued. No living being was ever meant to walk there. And yet, a man advanced. His steps were heavy but determined. His face bore the marks of despair that only a truly condemned soul could carry. He was not a warrior, nor a king. He was merely a broken man, whose eyes reflected something Hades recognized instantly, defying fate. The mortal knelt before the throne. His breathing was fast, but he did not tremble. There was a weight upon him, something even the gods could not ignore. And then he pleaded, "Lord of the Underworld, I do not come for myself. I come for the one I lost, the one who was taken before their time." Hades did not react immediately. What could be said? How many had knelt before him with the same request? How many souls had screamed the names of their loved ones as they were dragged into eternity? But the laws of the underworld were unbreakable. The cycle of life and death was not meant to be questioned. No soul returned. No fate was rewritten. The dead do not return, mortal. There is nothing you can offer to change that. But the man insisted. He offered everything. His name, his soul, his future, his eternity. He did not fear damnation, only the void that absence left in his chest. Hades watched him for a long time. It was foolish. It was insane. It was familiar. For as much as he refused to admit it, he understood that despair. He understood what it was to lose something without having the power to prevent it. And then, for the first time in countless ages, the Lord of the Dead hesitated. And in that moment, without knowing it, the balance of the world was broken. The decision had been made. Hades, the immutable, the unwavering, who for ages had upheld the absolute order of the underworld, had hesitated, even if only for an instant, even if no one but him knew. But the moment he allowed doubt to settle in his mind, something deep and ancient stirred in the heart of his realm. The underworld was not just a place. It had its own rules, its own forces. And now, something in the shadows was moving. The rivers of death seemed to tremble. The Styx, once calm and deadly, began to bubble as if something was trying to emerge from its depths. The Phlegethon roared, its flames flickering higher than ever before. In the depths of Tartarus, where the gods rarely dared to look, a presence awakened. It was not a titan. It was not just any soul. It was something older than time itself, something that Hades, in his wisdom, had never spoken of to the Olympian gods. Something that was meant to remain asleep. Hades' eyes narrowed. Deep within his divine essence, he knew his decision had not gone unnoticed. The underworld was a realm of balance, a place where souls found their rightful end. And now, by giving a mortal the illusion of choice, the very fabric of that order had begun to unravel. If a single soul could defy death, then how many more would dare to try? A tremor ran through the black stone walls of the palace. Cerberus let out a deafening howl, as if sensing an invisible presence approaching. Hades rose from his throne. His hand rested on his helm of invisibility, an automatic gesture, an instinct of war awakening within him. It was not fear that took hold of him. Hades did not know fear. It was a silent recognition that something was about to happen. Something that could change not just the underworld but all of existence. The mortal was still kneeling before him, unaware of what had been set in motion. But Hades knew. He could feel the shadows shifting, the threat rising like a dark tide that no one could contain. The underworld whispered to him, and for the first time, the Lord of the Dead realized that perhaps, just perhaps, he had made a mistake he could never undo. The underworld had never known change. It was a realm of absolutes, of immutable laws, where every soul had its place, and every fate was sealed without question. But now, something had been broken. Hades felt it like an echo reverberating through the depths of the earth, like an invisible crack spreading across the veil between life and death. He could not see what was coming, but he knew it was already on its way. He looked at the mortal kneeling before him, still awaiting judgment, still hoping for a miracle that might never come. Was this the danger of offering hope to those who should accept the end? For ages, Hades had ruled without doubt, without concessions, without hesitation. But by allowing a single soul to challenge the laws of the underworld, he had opened a path that perhaps could never be closed. And on the other side of that breach, something far worse than death awaited. The Lord of the Dead rose, adjusted his black crown, and prepared for the inevitable. He did not know what was about to emerge from the shadows, but of one thing he was certain: when balance is broken, someone must pay the price. And this time, perhaps even a god could be condemned.